Oh, our time is running already, so I'm going to start.
Okay.
This is sort of a follow-through from yesterday about that whole concept of being and doing and the concept of the feminine and the masculine. As I always say, if we were to do a billion happy, then we need at least 500 million happy women. That's actually statistically not correct. There are more women in the world, slightly more women in the world than men. But this is actually not about women, as you will see. It will be more about the feminine. And so I'm Mo. This is Tiny Beast. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Hi, I'm Tiny Beast.
Tiny.
Yes, my name is, other than Tiny Beast, is Anahita. I am Mo as a woman. Thank you, yes.
Why did you have to pick up the hair?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I feel like you don't need any introduction for Mo, but maybe I should just say, hi, I'm a person as well. And who came to my talk last year? Yes, a few people. Okay, good. So basically, I work in New York City. I used to survive. Now I'm finally getting a taste of what it means to thrive as a human being, first and foremost, and then as a woman. What do I do? Similar to most of you, I have a coaching practice that basically draws on a field that is emerging and is called contemplative science. So contemplative science is the convergence of Eastern psychology, philosophy, specifically Buddhist, and Western science. So you have the modalities of psychology, psychotherapy, neuroscience, and now more and more quantum physics is in conversation with the Eastern thought. So that's a methodology that I draw on and I unleash on men and women who are mostly influential leaders in their own fields, who come to me and who really have a lot of let's say, potential for impacting the world in a really positive and sustainable way, but often don't have the tools. And so my work is to really, set them on fire. And you're supposed to laugh. Like, I mean it. I'm really, look, you know why? Because to be able to withstand an animal like this, you gotta be fierce. So I mean it. It's fierce. And I think that that's the only way you can really break through some of our mental calcifications. And I want to talk to you about that later. So that's me, in a nutshell.
Don't take the Tiny Beast or the peaceful look any lightly, okay? So Anahita, I said many times at the beginning of this conference, I think this is going to be the best session of the conference. Not because of my half of it, but more because of her half of it. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very interesting topic, and not because either of us is actually more feminine than masculine. As a matter of fact, we're both reasonably balanced. But we will play it very differently. You will play it, I will take the masculine side and linear thinking, analytical approach to things, and Anahita will bring you the feminine, inclusive, more holistic view of things. And I think when you see it from both sides, it will be much, much more powerful. It's not the first time we do this, and so hopefully you will enjoy this conversation. I'll start from exactly where we are. I'll tell you that this is the current state of empowering women in the world. It is really, really like pulling a rock up a very steep hill. Normally I share very clear statistics. I'm very, very numeric about this. Believe it or not, we have not even scratched the surface. The issue is very real. Women are truly, by every way you measure it, not getting what we deserve for women in this world today. And the problem, of course, is when things become difficult, every one of us tends to do more of what we know how to do best, okay? And to me, this probably is the biggest problem we face with the idea of empowering femininity in the world today, is that we keep doing more and more of the same things. We just do them harder and harder and harder and harder. And to me, this is always the first call to action to tell ourselves maybe we should do it differently. Maybe something that we're doing, regardless of how hard we're doing it, is actually not working at all. And so I put a lot of effort, and I consulted with a lot of partners on this. And I think the challenge with the whole idea of equality is actually the word equality itself, okay? Because tomatoes and eggs ready, I actually don't believe we're equal at all, okay? I mean, one look at me and Anahita, and you would recognize that there is nothing about us that is equal, right? Well, of course, you're going to say, oh, Mo, it's not about looks and physical appearance. This is not a world about physical strength or physical features. You know, we are both exactly as smart as each other. We're equal. This is a world that values smarts. No, we are not as smart as each other, okay? And this is not just my view of life. This is the scientific view of life. We're very, 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 very differently smart, okay? And there is absolutely no way you can compare the feminine and the masculine, a man and a woman, and in any logical way that is not laughable, say that we're equal. We're going to come back to what we are, but for now, just bear with me, and let's look at the neuroscience of this.
So this is quite interesting, actually. On the left, you have an image of a man's brain, a male brain, and you can see there's quite little activity happening there. Wait, but that's at rest. It's not during the day, so I'm not making any suggestions that men are not intelligent. Sorry. Some women were like, yes, finally. No, but a woman's brain is a lot more active at rest. Who relates to that? Where you kind of find yourself incessantly thinking and ruminating? Yeah. And as a result of that, women have a tendency, I mean, I myself, honestly, when I have I'm overcome by some kind of challenge or mental affliction of sorts, my natural inclination is to seek out somebody like Mo and say, hey, can we just talk about this? I really need to get this off my chest. I need you to listen to me, to understand, to respond, to resonate, right? So we like to express ourselves when we're challenged in that sense.
Yeah, my tendency, however, if I get stressed, is I need to lock my room and be completely alone and reflect on this and solve it on my own.
Which drives me crazy.
Right? Is one of those better than the other? They're just very different approaches to the problem. Let's take another one. A woman's brain tends to have a bigger prefrontal cortex, and a man's brain tends to have a bigger amygdala. And what that means is that I am constantly, every single minute, including during this presentation, I'm scanning for threats, okay? Threats being, am I on time? Are you laughing? Is this working okay? Is my body language correct? Is Anahita too far? Is she too close? That's the way my brain works.
Right. Whereas we women, we have a tendency to pay attention to a lot of details, which also include inner experiences, right? Experiences of emotions and feeling states and sensations in the body. And then we kind of weave all of those together into a coherent narrative on a moment-to-moment basis. So that's a lot of energy that we exert on a moment-to-moment basis as women.
And of course, if you come back to us and talk to us about those details, we have not even seen them. You understand? So sometimes you bring things up that are so obvious to a man, but a man hasn't even seen it because we don't have the brain capacity to comprehend as much detail as you do.
By the way, women and spiders, who has heard that connection? Like the notion of weaving a web all the time. I think that's a good analogy, just to add.
Okay.
Okay, females have a larger anterior cingulate cortex, which is essentially a part of your brain that is responsible also for regulating attention. As a result, women have more awareness and insights, especially when it pertains to emotions. But then the downside of that is that we tend to worry a lot. We tend to kind of, fall into these places of powerlessness and overwhelm when it comes to feelings and emotions.
Yeah, of course, the more you see from the world, the more you can, see reasons to worry and to plan and to, right? We just need football and, women. And that's it, basically, right? So, right?
And okay, wait, but we're generalizing a lot as well, okay? So
That's
just take all
important.
of this with a pinch of salt. We're not saying all women and all men are just subject to these, okay? So just be a bit flexible.
That's a very important point, yes.
Yes.
This is my favorite. This is what we spoke about yesterday. The corpus callosum is the fiber that connects the left brain and the right brain. And so men have a much, much, much more ability to just be left brains. So we can be linear thinkers, we can just stay there and chill and just get things done, do, and we don't really have the ability to move back and forth that frequently. It's a good thing, I believe, when things need to be done or certain problems need to be addressed linearly, but of course women on the other hand have the ability to.
Basically, what is referred to in neuroscience as bilateral hemisphere integration. So we have the ability to kind of flip back and forth sideways between the left and the right hemisphere. So we have the ability to suddenly, have access to linear thinking, to algorithmic thinking, to all of the whatever we would call left-centric, more male attributes of processing information. And at the same time, we have access to feeling states, to holding a more paradoxical picture of reality, to spatial awareness and all the rest, which are right-centric.
Yeah, and then my absolute favorite is how you ladies have
a larger hippocampus.
Yes.
So that's the part of the brain that is responsible for, let's say, retaining explicit memory. So all of the memory that you're just basically producing and retaining, and that's bubbling underneath.
Yeah, which works really well for my amygdala now, because I know for sure that if I say anything wrong, you will remember it forever. Okay, so to me, this is very scary. Okay, we can go on for hours. By the way, there is a ton of research that will tell you this. And I say that with respect, and sometimes you'll see me very passionate about this topic, because this is what we're doing wrong, okay? We are absolutely not equal. As in we are not the same, huh? We are not the same. On the other hand, we deserve to have equal opportunity, equal treatment, equal respect, equal appreciation, and so on and so forth. Right? And so if you really think about this, the challenge we have is that we are simply chasing the wrong target. Okay? If we're chasing the wrong target, sameness is not the right target. The right target is fairness. Do you understand? And if we start to see that tiny difference in definition, everything flips upside down, okay? Because suddenly you are no longer trying to prove that you're equal to your colleague at work, because you're not. If the game we were playing, if workplace was about carrying 100 pounds from this side of the stage to other side of the stage 100 times a day, by definition, you're not going to win. The average woman is not going to win. There will be certain women that are better than the average man in that task, but on average, the average woman is not going to win. Now, the way I try to make this super clear visually is to tell you that the best way to miss your target is to aim for the wrong target, okay? And that's what we've been doing, in my personal view, for years and years and years and years. Now, what does that mean? I'll give you a anyone knows American Ninja Warriors? Yeah. American Ninja Warriors, for those who don't know, is an obstacle course where you have to go across multiple physical challenges, hang from monkey bars and flip and do like weird stuff that I will never do. And American Ninja Warriors has been doing really well recently in terms of celebrating women as women go more and more through the course. So I'll show you the favorites of that.
Casey Catanzaro. Let's get this list started off right with a true trailblazer. Casey Catanzaro is one of the sport's top female athletes, and arguably its most famous. Mighty Casey became the first woman to complete a city qualifying course in 2014 by making it up the monstrous 14-foot warped wall. Which is nearly 3 times her height. Her record-breaking didn't stop there, however, as she soon after became the first, and for a long time, the only woman to complete a city finals course.
Yes. Casey Catanzaro has done it!
Truly a
Jessie Graff shattered it. The stunt woman, also known as Tumbleweed, is a true superhero of the sport, and not just because of her outfits. While she is part of the elite group of women to have made it up the warped wall, Graff was also the first one to have finished stage 1 of the Vegas finals.
First one right there to complete stage 1. Jessie Graff has done it!
Not only that, she also became the only woman to complete stage 2 while competing on Team USA in the 2017 USA vs. the World competition.
So you have to be proud. Like, look at this. This is so complicated. They're jumping into this. They're doing amazing work. And everyone gets really inspired by Casey and Jesse. And this year, I think, we had the third one, Megan, who made it to the qualifiers, to the national qualifiers. I actually don't know what happened afterwards. Now, here's the point. As much as the media sensation is happening around this, no woman will ever win, ever. American Ninja Warriors. It's just for you to know, the statistics look like this. Okay? So all of the media sensation will give you, oh my God, Casey completed the city qualifiers. You know, Megan made it to the national finals. One woman completed one course. Another woman completed another course. They'll focus on this and celebrate it. Here is the truth. Okay? This is where Megan went. This is as far as Casey went. And this is as far as Jesse went. Okay? Just for you to understand the numbers behind this game, there are thousands of people, 75,000 applicants so far, of which tens of thousands competed, of which there were hundreds of people in the finals, of which there were 3,500 finalists. Of those, there was one woman. Okay? This is a very unfair game. I love the game. Okay? But the way the game is played is never going to allow a woman to win. Yet, we all fall for American Ninja Warriors. Okay? Yet, we all celebrate Casey. Now, that's the unfairest way ever we can support women. Right? Because the only way for a woman to win this game is for the game to be designed to embrace what a woman can contribute. If this was a game that needed empathy, right? Then women will have a better way of building teams, for example, or of communicating, of finding empathy for the other players, and so on and so forth. As long as the game is designed on physical strength, then men will always win. That's just the truth. Now, the bigger problem is that this is not just a game. I'm just going to go through that slide. The bigger game is what I call corporate Ninja Warriors. Okay? The workplace is like American Ninja Warriors. It's designed for the masculine. Okay? It is a place where we have told women, if you want to come in and succeed, you need to compete with men. And if we compete with men, just like with American Ninja Warriors, we end up doing what? We end up getting women to drop their femininity. And by the way, we end up getting men who are feminine to drop their femininity. And we end up getting everyone to walk in there and act masculine. We all become aggressive, we all become competitive, we all become linear thinkers, we all become, and so on, and so on, and so on, right? And as we do that, we harm ourselves twice. From one side, we put more men, we put more masculine in the boardroom, okay? As we put more masculine in the boardroom, we're putting them with different body parts. But remember, this is not about body parts. This is about energy and behavior, right? So the ones that get into leadership are still masculine in their behavior. We reinforce to the entire world that the only way to succeed is to become masculine. And so accordingly, we reinforce more and more masculine behavior in our world, and we lose the feminine, our ability to be feminine on the way. Okay? There is no better way to disempower the feminine than to ask all of us to use our different body parts, but still behave masculine. Okay? To me, if you ask me, that is the problem to solve. The problem to solve is, can I have women, or feminine men and women, show up in the workplace completely embracing their feminine side? So I did a bit of research on what is feminine. What is feminine is understanding, simply, I'll start from grapefruit. No, feminine is not grapefruit, okay? I'll start from understanding something that you can relate to. What is a grapefruit? What makes you recognize a grapefruit as compared to any other fruit? It's something that I call a character profile chart. You can be very systemic about saying that the level of tanginess of grapefruit is higher than mango. The level of sweetness is lower than strawberries, whatever that is. There are characters to everything that you interact with in life, And those characters are distributed across a chart. How much of each of those characters we have will describe whatever it is you're trying to describe. That also includes femininity and masculinity. The thing about characters and character profiles is truly where our society went wrong, okay? Because some of us actually love grapefruit. Grapefruit is my favorite fruit, which is completely misunderstood for a lot of people. It's like, are you kidding? This actually tastes horrible, right? But you like kale, like, so I'm allowed to like grapefruit if you like kale and quinoa. I'm against quinoa. I'm going to have a movement against quinoa, right? Low sweetness, is that good or bad? This is truly, I actually want you in your heart to understand this next point. Low sweetness, is this good or bad? The problem with our society is our society said things that are not very sweet are bad, right? Too little of something or too much of something is where our societies go wrong. The only thing that can be wrong with one character or the other is if it's taken out of proportion, right? And that is exactly what happened to our understanding of the feminine. When we look at the feminine, this is the character profile. This is a very summarized character profile. By the way, if you look at the characters of humanity, there are in the 100+ characters that we can look at. I tried to summarize them into 17 characters, okay? Those 17 characters are available in every human to varying degrees. On the feminine, there is more intuition than assertiveness. Okay? There is more resilience than linear thinking. There is more inclusion than strength, and so on and so forth. Right? The feminine tends to have more of the above ones and less of the lower ones. And that, by the way, includes, I'll keep saying this, includes men sometimes that are more feminine. I'll give you a very good example in a few minutes. Now, here's the interesting thing. Intuition is just a quality. Do you understand what that means? It's a quality. It's something that we can use, and we can use it well, or we can use it bad. A little bit of intuition is incredibly valuable. It's almost, we cannot live without it. A little more intuition can change the game. Too much intuition, and we become irrational, right? Similarly, with assertiveness. A little bit of assertiveness is important to get along in life. Too much assertivenness, and you become forceful, you become aggressive sometimes, you become stubborn, and so on and so forth, right? So none of those qualities is good or bad in itself. What is good or bad is how we use them. Can we agree to that? Now, society has told us that the feminine qualities are bad. And that's why we hide them. Society is wrong. Can we agree to that? Right? It's when we overplay them that they become wrong, but when we underplay them, it's even worse. Now, here's the interesting point. If we take some of those characters, and I want you to think about a leader that you came across in life, or that you heard of in life, that played very strongly to those characters and changed the world as a result. Who did you say? Gandhi. Nelson Mandela, exactly, right? And I know Gandhi has been controversial in the media recently. Don't believe what you read in the media, at least until it's verified. This is a person that used characters such as intuition, endurance, inclusion, empathy, communication skills, to lead a movement that was all about non-violent resistance that saved his entire nation and billions of people. Do you understand that? He could not have done that with masculine qualities. With masculine qualities, he would have gone to war, lost a few tens or hundreds of millions of Indians in the process, where he fought against his enemy, and it would have been a bloodbath. What made Gandhi Gandhi, I dare say this, is he was a woman. Do you understand this? Feminine. Right? I use it to shock you. Right? Because I am. Because I will tell you, I succeeded in my entire career because of feminine qualities. I was never the smartest person in the room. I was never the best linear thinker. I was never the most assertive person in the room. Okay? I could get people to relate to me, to follow me, to work with me through feminine qualities. Of course, we shouldn't ignore that Gandhi also had masculine qualities, right? I'm skipping the slides, but you get my point, huh? Masculine qualities, come on, Gandhi.
It's as well.
All right, so actually I need to borrow from something that Gandhi said, huh? So the thing I'm trying to say here is, if we allow the feminine qualities to rise, we would still succeed in the workplace, we would still succeed in politics, we would still succeed in everything, but we would succeed differently. Non-violent resistance is not the way resistance is normally viewed. Do you understand that? So what we want to do is for us to believe in ourselves to the point where we say, we're going to do this differently, we're going to do it by empowering the feminine. And this is what Gandhi said about that. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Okay? So this is not going to be easy for any person in this room that will choose to empower the feminine. Because by definition, you will show up, and at the first day, I had meetings in my boardrooms, in my management, peer groups, where they looked at me and said, Mo, you're too soft. And I was like, yeah, but if I run to that hill, everyone in my organization is going to follow me, right? Because I'm too soft. And it's not bad to be too soft, right? It's bad to overdo it and underdo assertiveness, but there is an interesting balance that corporate America and the world needs to learn. As I was trying to get to you, Gandhi also had masculine qualities. Now the slides are cooperating. He had action orientation, he had courage, and so on and so forth, which truly brings us to that whole idea of for us to be complete, we need to empower both. Okay? To empower both means to stop demonizing the other side. To stop saying men are horrible, okay? Because I will tell you openly, without masculine energy, we wouldn't be here. But with too much masculine energy, we may not be here in the future. And with too much masculine energy, being here is not as optimum as it should be. The first thing I ask the feminine of us is stop saying the other guy is the enemy. It's not us versus them. As Gandhi said in the last slide, an eye for an eye would leave all of us blind. The truth is it's not us versus them, it's us plus them. And the truth is it's not us versus them, it's you plus you. Now this is truly what we need to focus the rest of the presentation on. The idea of for you to empower you, you need to recognize that despite what the world tells you, you have certain qualities that are different than me, that different than her, that different than him, then different than her. None of us. It's actually almost stupid to say every grapefruit is exactly the same like every other grapefruit. The truth is every single one of us has a slightly different amount of each of those qualities. And the game is, where do those qualities fit? So if you have an appreciation for beauty, empathy, awareness, and passion, good communication skills and action orientation and courage, you can become an artist. And there is nothing wrong in the world with being an artist. If you have those empathy, awareness, compassion, communication skills, and intuition, oops, I'm so sorry. My slides are not playing along well today, but I'm okay. You become an HR, for example. So if you can understand, have empathy to people, you're intuitive, you have passion for this thing, you're responsible because humans are important, and so on. I can give you many, many examples. I think the one example that matters most is the last example, which is not this one. This is the salespeople. This one. And this is exactly where our world has gone wrong. Our world has assumed that leaders need to have those. Okay? The truth is, I have never in my life worked with a leader or read about a leader that changed the world without having those. Where women are failing, if I may say, where the feminine is failing, is that you're trying to imitate those instead of trying to play to your strength. This was the last bullet, the last slide of the last talk. Okay? Play to your strength. Go to life. Go through life bringing all of you to life. And when you bring all of you to life, suddenly your strengths are what pushes us forward, not trying to complement your weaknesses, ignoring your strength. And this has been my absolute call to action to everyone I have met in the past couple of years, man or woman, is to not empower body parts anymore, but to empower the family. So let's take that and talk about happiness and our personal lives.
Okay, thank you. I just need a sip of water, sorry. So when I said Mo is an animal, did anyone wonder what animal he is? Okay.
Did anyone actually wonder? What's wrong with you?
Okay, so I'm
not
Tiny
a tiger.
Beast, and he's my pet gerbil. Okay.
Thank you for the answer.
All right, so I'm gonna maybe just share a little bit about how, hamster?
Hamster, yeah.
Okay, hamster. how I have the privilege of being here on stage, because usually I talk about the contemplative science of happiness, and it's also very sort of, let's say, it's a very linear approach to happiness that I take. I'm trained in science and neuroscience and psychology and all the rest. Some of my mentors are astrophysicists, and I just, yeah, so this is a very new domain for me, and I want to share how I ended up here. I'm Iranian. So I'm born in Iran. I'm born into a Muslim culture, even though my family is relatively secular. I was raised with this notion that a woman has to be like a flower. You know, always wear your skirt over, longer than below your knee. You know, keep your legs together. When we have guests, bring, the tea to the table, and don't be too loud, and don't be too, crazy, and all the rest. And eventually, you marry a rich husband, and everything is fine. Right? So that's sort of like the purpose of our lives. As some of our, my fellow countrywomen, it's to be as beautiful as possible, and then to find yourself a rich husband, and ideally, go and live happily ever after. And it was just, as much as I tried to resist it, it was there, and it made me really angry. It made me furious. It made me so furious that I shaved my head, and I dyed my eyebrows pink, and I was even angrier than that. I used to cut myself, and I used to break things, and I used to listen to a song by Nirvana that was really effed up. Remember Rape Me, that song? It's terrible. And I would sing it in the balcony in Iran, and my mom came in storming in, "What are you singing?" Because I just had my Walkman on, and I would sing these angry songs, and it was really bad. I was really angry. I was angry at the role models I had around me. I was angry at everything about women. It just pissed me off. And I tried to part with men. Men were cooler. Men were much more compact and effective, and they could climb fences, and they could, get shit done, and they didn't have messy things about them. And anyway, I was really, really biased until, my boobs grew and my hair grew, and I had larger hips, and then suddenly I found myself wanting to dance and wanting to date boys and feeling excited and all the rest. So the femininity just poured out of my pores. I couldn't keep it in. It was just like a tsunami came out of me. So then I said, okay, let's go with this. So I went with this, and the feminine, what was natural for me took me on this really beautiful journey where I began to get into sacred dance and Sufi whirling, which is very much part of my Iranian culture. I would hear poems by Rumi put to classical Persian music, and I would just start whirling. And then I would collapse and cry to the beloved, and I had no training in any of this. And I felt things, and I could talk about the divine, and I get goosebumps right now as I'm telling you this because it's fucking real for me. I feel it in my body. And so the spiritual journey for me began from that gate, the gates of the feminine. And it was authentic, and it was real, and I traveled in India, and I was dancing on rooftops, and I would sit with senior Tibetan monks, and I would say the things they would say. I understood what they were saying. But then came a point where I felt like there was a barrier between me and the world. I felt I wanted to share, but people didn't understand. It was like, well, this doesn't make sense to my reductionist scientific mind. How can you validate this? Give me proof. And then as I kept meeting resistance and resistance and resistance, I said, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I should go learn a little bit of science. Maybe I should begin to integrate some of the more sort of like scientific and linear approaches to spirituality. And then I had the great honor of having an encounter with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's now my teacher. And he said, teach science. Teach Buddhism through the lens of science. Go study neuroscience, go understand basic quantum physics. And so I did. I ran with it, and I built a coaching practice based on science and rigor and analysis and reasoning, faith that's grounded in reason. And I lost the feminine. So what used to come so naturally, where I would go into these ecstatic states, it was like a language I forgot to speak. And I would put on music, and my body didn't know what to do. So I went through years of disembodiment, disconnect, living in New York City, trying to build a coaching practice as a woman, completely parched, dehydrated, and disconnected. And lo and behold, you know, we have sacred unions. We have people we meet. They activate us. I activate him. He activates me. And so my reintegration began. I'm not saying he's the cause, but he's a massive, 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 massive inspiration. He's a sacred man, and I love him. And if anyone's curious to know, we're not together, we are best fucking friends. Right? Fist bump. Okay, I should start my presentation. So, we all want to be happy, fundamentally as sentient beings, as human beings. But I'm going to just talk to you about women, because this is about women, and I'm going to talk to you first about unhappiness, right? Because to be happy, if that's our inherent natural state, then we just have to identify what's in the way, right? And eliminate that. So it's not a process of addition, it's a process of negation that we're seeking to incorporate here. So let's take a realistic look at the experience of being a woman. And look, we all have issues, but let's just stick with women for now, so I'm not making any statement that we women have issues and men don't. Men, you really have to get to work.
Oh my God.
But I want to invite all the women in this room, and the men too, when we're talking about the feminine and the men, to be really honest here with me. I work with a lot of, you know, high, what do you call them? High impact, high volatility, just like high strong women who work so hard that they don't get their periods, right? Mm-hmm. So some of them, when you really kind of dig deep, you get to understand that they have this deep sense of inadequacy, right? There's a sense of never really being good enough. That if you peel even deeper or look even deeper, you get to a place where it really hurts and they don't want to look at and they don't want to acknowledge, and there's a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame about being a woman because I thought being a woman is just, I don't have to go into it, I gave you the whole story. For me, there was a lot of shame. If there's something that we don't like or there's something that creates a lot of discomfort, most of us are in the mental health space, we know that we dissociate. We just project ourselves out of that. We become disembodied. So as women, we have this incredible, incredible system of power. You know, we have a part of our body that's entirely designed for pleasure, right? Our bodies are bliss bodies, and yet we're so disconnected, right? We've internalized patriarchal values in so many ways. And I'm not blaming anybody. We want relationships, but then we attract men or women into our lives and we feel like we're never really met, right? Who feels that? That they're never really met by their other. That they're never really able to feel held. Like, I'm here, I'm showing up, show up. And they don't, right? And then we seek love, we seek validation, we make ourselves, you know, we go out of our ways. I mean, we're all like integrated women in this audience. I'm not talking so much about you, but I'm talking about the women whose lives you're impacting and who you're facilitating the healing for. So many women are overcompensating, they are compromising, they are so parched, so dry, so thirsty for something, and yet they don't know where to find it. So then they go to all the wrong places. And then there is a sense of perpetual dissatisfaction. This is actually the definition of suffering in Buddhism, which is dukkha, which means all-pervasive dissatisfaction. So no matter what I am, no matter how my life is, there's always something better over the hill out there, right? Who relates to that? That no matter what, in the moment, there's always something that needs to be adjusted to bring about that final moment of like, okay? And that's agony. If we look at the nature of our interpersonal connections, there's a lack of authentic connection and communication, a lack of trust. A lot of women don't really trust each other. I mean, we do. But like when you know, right? Yeah. Competitiveness. Do we perceive that? I mean, I still have that in me. I'm really honest with you here. I still, like the inner reptile just goes like totally into, alert mode. When I'm in certain situations, I admit that. I still lack trust sometimes, myself. And I'm standing here preaching. Hypocrite. Compromising needs and desires to keep others happy. I bet a lot of us do that. Who does that? Right? Compromising needs and desires. Some of us don't even know what the fuck we desire. What do we really desire? And then overcompensating by being nice or being good or being responsible as wives, sisters, mothers, daughters, and all the rest. So then, globally, what kind of issues do we experience? We experience fragmentation. As a woman, I have this like massive schizophrenic experience of like, well, then there's, what's her name? Kylie Jenner and Kim Kardashian and Rihanna, and I have all these like relatively mild Instagram influencers that I follow because I kind of like their strategy, but then I find myself like watching hours of their videos in Paris Fashion Week, and I'm like, is she using fillers? Maybe I should use fillers, and I'm like, shit, 20 minutes of my time just went, gone, looking at this woman's Instagram videos, and what did I benefit? Nothing. So the pressure to fit into templates for success, for beauty, for sexuality, all the female gender roles that we're taught, and we're so influenced by consumer pop culture. And especially our young girls who are looking up to these influencers, these bloggers, these role models. So are they ever really able to connect to what it means to be authentically themselves as female beings? And imagine this is being produced in scale. Just we're putting these out culturally, socially, economically, politically. What are we creating in terms of dysfunction? And then I was thinking, living in New York City and Manhattan and working with a lot of corporate women, there's always this like, oh, she's so badass. I get called badass. I get called all kinds of bullshit. And I'm like, what does badass even mean? So I researched badass, and I was like, this is the kind of stuff that comes up when you Google badass women. Basically, it's like the ultimate male fetish, right? And I'm not saying you guys, but some guys like want to see women with like big boobs and machine guns driving like military vehicles and killing people and being turned on like crazy at the same time. It's like, what is that? So the stereotypes that we're faced with in terms of like a badass woman, and who really wants to be badass anyway? And so I Googled it, and when you write badass, immediately you get woman. And then you get things like dog names, girl names, female warriors, and beard care. Says so much about our culture. Anyway, so just let's take 5 seconds because I feel like I attacked you. Just close your eyes for one moment. And just take one deep breath and exhale through the mouth. Thank you. All right. So potential. I'm going to borrow from the profound teachings that are actually secret, so I'm going to get in trouble, from Tibetan Buddhism and the teachings of Buddhist Tantra. I'm going to only share some elements, but when you're practicing Buddhism, you're doing it in a very masculine way, so a lot of women get really fed up and they drop out. They're like, wait, I'm not a man, I'm not a monk. But once you get to the end part, it's like the cream. Everything you've learned, you throw out of the window. And then suddenly you're in this like expansive, open state, which is really the nature of reality. Potential. So I want to begin to correct something in 6 minutes. So beginning with potential, each one of us is nothing but potential, right? So let's just take a moment and disconnect from our heavy identification with our gender. And imagine that we are absolutely open to anything and everything. And in this moment, your mind has the capacity to create anything. And I feel like Coco Chanel tapped on that when she said, I decided who I wanted to be, and that is who I am. That's somebody who maybe just subconsciously had an awareness of everything in its essence being just open potential. And so how many of us really dwell there? How many of us have access to that? That's what I would like to start with. Identifying as potential. So I'd like you to extend your imagination for just a moment. Imagine that your narrative, your sense of self, your gender roles, all of that is suspended, and all you are is potential. And I invite you to feel this in your body. Imagine that you are, in essence, pure potential. And so, starting from here, you begin to shed masks. You begin to shed the layers of selfhood that accumulated and calcified over the course of perhaps lifetimes. And you make space. And you drop into the space. So there's this notion of dropping, right? So as Mo was using Gandhi as an example of resistance that is non-assertive, that is passive. So we want to imagine, and I invite you to follow me energetically, and I know most of you are yoginis, so follow me. Imagine dropping down into a wellspring where there is a resource. There is something that's always been there and will always be there. And men have that too. It's just the nature of mind. It's not necessarily subject only to women. And this is something that I love to call groundwater. So groundwater is this thing, this essence, this fluid that's always there, but we don't necessarily see it, we don't have contact with it, but it's there. So now I would like you to follow me energetically to your womb space, to the space which in the yogic tradition is often compared to having water-like qualities, fluid in essence. So groundwater, the place, the ground from which all things arise, abide, and then return to. Quantum physics has very interesting insights into the nature of quantum field and all that. If you're interested, please talk to Mo afterwards. But
forget physics now.
The fabric, the ground. And I would love to ask, who feels what I'm saying in their bodies right now? Okay, ground. So place your hand on the part of your body where this resonates. When I say ground water. Yeah. And if you like, you can keep your hand there. So imagine rising in the morning and having a connection to this, because we're all good linear thinkers. We don't even need to go and further polish that. So imagine that's there. I'm not saying throw that out. That's already there. But imagine rising in the morning and having a connection to the ground of being, having meditated on this notion that you are entirely potential and you can create or arise as whatever you desire. So then what is your authentic feminine expression? Listening. I'm not saying listening as in being quiet and hearing. I'm saying listening. Like the Sufis say listening. So imagine activating listening right now. So that effort that your mind makes when you're listening, right? So there's a sensing into something that is not visible, a sensing into something that is not yet manifest. That's a quality of the mind that you can access. Attunement, resonance, becoming so subtle with your awareness that you're able to pick up radio frequency, for example, that you're able to sense the other person's subjective experience, intuition, as Mo talked about. Embodied intelligence, right? So not just being merely stuck on the hamster wheel of conceptual elaboration, but really feeling with the whole body. The ability to hold paradox. It doesn't always have to be black and white. It could be both at the same time. Fierce compassion, not sugar-coated nice girl compassion, but compassion that will do whatever it takes to protect the truth. Seeing the whole, which is a beautiful right hemisphere function. The ability to weave that spider web I mentioned earlier and put everything together and understand the nature of interdependence, that everything I say, speak, think, do with my body, everything has a result that it produces. Nothing is just lost. Nothing is isolated. And playfulness, the ability to be fully expressed and to play, I think is something that is really unique to feminine expression. Because when you're not entangled in a self-concept, when you're not boxed into the confined prison of self, you can do whatever you want. You can play. And if you're an ethical good person, which most of you are, then play. Then what is holding you back? And fluidity, of course, as we talked about, water. So it all starts with self-love. And by self-love, I'm not saying taking lavender baths. I'm not saying buying another crystal necklace. I'm saying getting really radically honest about what is in your way. It's about getting really honest about what is obstructing you and being your fiercest, fullest expression as a woman. It's not going to take another lavender bath. I'm really clear about that because I'm seeing that all over, okay?
There are lavender baths? I
Huh?
didn't know that. There are baths of lavender? I didn't
There are.
know that. Okay, yeah.
Training the mind. You have a mind? Train it. And that's ultimately what I would like to leave you with. Train your mind. And what does that mean? That means plus, do more of the things that are virtuous, that are ethical, that bring love and happiness into the world. And do less of what makes you and others unhappy and suffer. That is the very simple formula. So with that, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you both.
I'm sorry I took.